For hours, the Meerkat Colony had dug, a tireless, unified effort under the relentless Kalahari sun. Their focus was absolute, their tiny paws moving with the precision of a geological clock. Each vibration of the sand a promise of a fat, juicy scorpion. Suddenly, an alarm call. A sharp, distinct ski cuts through the heat. Every head snaps up. Every creature bolts for the nearest hole, their precious, half-exposed meal abandoned. But overhead, the sentinel, a fork-tailed Drongo, simply waits on a low acacia branch, silent now. Did the danger pass? Or was it never there at all? The Drongo, a creature known for its symbiotic partnership with the colony, is not their friend, but a master criminal, capable of manufacturing fear itself. Now, let's enter their world. If you're already enjoying this story, a quick like and share makes all the difference. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from today. The Kalahari Desert is a place of stark and stunning survival, a theater of relentless heat and sudden, violent storms. In this unforgiving landscape, the surrogates, or meerkats, thrive through community. They live by a simple, brutal contract. Cooperation is survival. A single meerkat hunting alone is a statistic waiting to happen, a soft-fleshed meal for a martial eagle, a jackal, or a cobra. They must rely on the sentry duty, a meerkat who positions itself on the highest mound, sacrificing its foraging time to watch the skies and the horizon. But that meerkat's vision is limited. Its view is a narrow circle of safety. This is where Decrurus ad similis enters the narrative. The fork-tailed Drongo. A bird of glossy black plumage and a perpetually watchful eye, the Drongo does not share the meerkat's diet. It prefers insects and small lizards. Yet its relationship with the colony is one of the most remarkable examples of interspecies cooperation in the wild. It is a partnership built on pure self-interest that nonetheless benefits both parties. From the vantage point of a tall acacia tree, the Drongo has a wide panoramic view that no meerkat on the ground can match. The bird acts as a perfect elevated alarm system, an aerial surveillance unit. When a raptor circles high overhead or a slender mongoose slinks through the grass, the Drongo issues its clear, sharp alarm call, the one we heard at the beginning. This call has been proven to be reliable, an undeniable signal of genuine danger. The meerkats know this sound. They trust it implicitly. The value proposition is simple. The meerkat gets superior, high-altitude protection, and the Drongo gets a constant moving source of unearthed insects and disturbed prey. In the first few seasons of this arrangement, the exchange was honest, a perfect balance of vigilance and reward. It allowed the meerkats to lower their own sentry duty time, focusing more energy on the critical task of finding food to sustain the colony. For the pets of the Drongo, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet delivered right to its hunting perch. It was, for a time, a beautiful symbiosis, a natural contract written in the clear, unforgiving air of the desert. But nature is rarely content with perfect balance. The Drongo, an inherently clever and opportunistic bird, began to notice a pattern. The meerkat's diligence was their weakness. They reacted to the Drongo's ski call with a speed and panic that was almost wasteful. They didn't pause to confirm the threat. They simply vanished. What if there was a way to trigger that valuable panic, not for mutual safety, but for personal gain? The moment of transition was likely subtle, a tiny, self-serving experiment. Perhaps the bird was genuinely hungry, spotting a particularly large, succulent grub the meerkat was about to consume. It decided to issue a false alarm. A short, sharp burst of the very alarm call that had saved the colony countless times. The meerkat, conditioned by survival, reacted instantly, diving headfirst into the nearest bolt hole, leaving its meal exposed. The Drongo swooped down immediately. It didn't wait for the meerkat to re-emerge. It snatched the abandoned food and flew back to its perch, consuming the stolen bounty in seconds. The Drongo had successfully monetized the meerkat's trust. This act of pure, calculated deception was the turn in their relationship, from a mutually beneficial pact to a weaponized tool of theft. It was a perfect crime, repeatable and nearly untraceable. This new dynamic wasn't a sustainable model for the Drongo, at least not yet. If the bird used the fake alarm too often, the meerkats would quickly learn to ignore the call entirely, destroying the very mechanism of the theft. The Drongo had to be strategic, a careful, calculated thief who stole only when the reward was worth the risk. Researchers began to document this phenomenon, realizing they weren't observing simple opportunism, but a complex cognitive deception. The Drongo's true genius lies in its vocal mimicry. The bird has a massive repertoire of calls capable of imitating the true, panic-inducing alarm calls of at least 45 other species. This is its toolkit of trickery. If the meerkats began to doubt its own ski call, the Drongo would switch tactics. It would suddenly mimic the urgent shrieks of a nearby pied babbler, a bird that also shares the meerkat's habitat and is known for its reliable alarm systems. The babbler call was a sound the meerkats hadn't yet learned to distrust. This deception became a fascinating pattern. The Drongo would act as a true lookout for a period, reinforcing the trust with genuine, life-saving warnings. This was the investment phase. Then, once the meerkats were lulled back into a state of absolute belief, the Drongo would strike. It would wait for a meerkat to excavate a particularly large lizard or a burrowing skink, then unleash a perfect, copied distress signal. It was a high-stakes, real-time game of behavioral manipulation. The stolen meals were not always spectacular, but the method was flawless. The Drongo was exploiting the fundamental, life-or-death programming of the meerkat brain. Run now, ask questions later. The cost of ignoring a genuine alarm call is death. The cost of responding to a false alarm is a stolen meal. In the balance of survival, the meerkats were forced to continue responding. They were locked in a partnership where one side was actively weaponizing the other's necessary vulnerability, ensuring the Drongo's survival at the cost of the meerkat's hard-earned dinner. The meerkats, however, are not simple victims. They are creatures of deep social intelligence, their survival predicated on rapid, collective learning. It was only a matter of time before they began to notice the pattern. The Drongo was always the first to appear after its life-saving call. They noticed the calls were most frequent when a high-value meal, a large lizard, a fat scorpion, was exposed. Their evolutionary intelligence was finally catching up to the bird's sophisticated deception. The meerkat's response was to implement a subtle, yet profound, act of skepticism. When the Drongo issued one of its familiar high-frequency alarm calls, the meerkats would still bolt, following their primal conditioning. But they would re-emerge from their burrows much faster than before. They would peek out cautiously, looking not just for the predator, but for the Drongo. If the bird was seen descending immediately to the abandoned spot, the meerkats would cautiously return, sometimes even challenging the bird for the spoils. The Drongo, realizing its original call had been compromised, did not retreat. Instead, it escalated the deception. This is the proving ground of their symbiotic battle. The bird, witnessing the meerkat's skepticism, began to use its vast mimicry skills in a more complex manner. It started mixing its calls. It would issue the alarm of a starling, a bird the meerkats rarely encountered, followed by the call of a common dove, a psychological tactic designed to confuse and overload the meerkat's internal threat matrix. The most astonishing development came when the Drongo began to mimic the alarm calls of the meerkats themselves. It would perch, watch a meerkat uncover a prized meal, and then issue the exact recognizable meerkat alarm call, making the theft appear to be the result of one of their own sentries. This level of deceit implies a capacity for what researchers call theory of mind, the ability to understand what another creature knows and believes. The Drongo wasn't just faking a sound, it was faking a reliable source of information. This evolutionary arms race continued, pushing both species to adapt their communication and their trust mechanisms in real time, with survival hanging in the balance. Climax of this evolutionary drama arrived when the Drongo began to deploy its ultimate weapon, the false meerkat alarm, but only after a genuine alarm had already been sounded. The meerkats, having just survived a near miss from a soaring falcon, were already hypervigilant, their adrenaline still running high. They had returned to their foraging with cautious, nervous movements, their trust systems already heavily taxed. A meerkat, let's call him Alpha, uncovered a prize, a large, protein-rich lizard. Just as Alpha prepared to consume it, the Drongo issued the exact, verifiable alarm call of the martial eagle, an apex predator known to strike with devastating speed. Alpha and the others scattered instantly. The Drongo waited for a beat, a master of timing, then swooped to steal the lizard. This was the crest of the deception, a layered lie built on a bedrock of truth. The bird had learned that the meerkat's state of mind was as important as the call itself. When they were already scared, they were incapable of second-guessing the source. The Drongo was leveraging their anxiety, not just their conditioning. The research showed that the frequency of these successful thefts correlated directly with the meerkat's overall stress levels. It was a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. The Drongo used genuine threats to build trust and increase anxiety, then exploited that very anxiety with false threats to steal food. The symbiotic relationship had peaked as an almost perfect confidence game. The meerkats could never fully sever the connection, for to ignore the genuine call was to invite death. They were held captive by the very mechanism that protected them. The story of the Drongo and the meerkat is a powerful counter-narrative to the romanticized view of nature. It teaches us that symbiosis is not always synonymous with harmony. It is often a delicate and relentless balance of self-interest, where the line between mutualism and exploitation is constantly being redrawn. For the meerkats, their life is now one of continuous, low-grade suspicion, a necessary cost for the superior protection the bird provides. The Drongo, the master mimic and confidence trickster, forces the meerkats to become smarter, more skeptical listeners. The meerkats, in turn, force the Drongo to become an even more sophisticated liar. They are locked in a co-evolutionary dance, a relationship of profound deceit that makes both species more alert, more complex, and ultimately more resilient. This bond, forged in the heat of the Kalahari, is a reflection of many complex human relationships, a constant negotiation where trust is a currency and truth is a strategy. It reminds us that even in the purest form of partnership, there is always an element of transaction, an ongoing test of loyalty and cunning. This is the profound truth that emerges from the desert. Survival often depends on knowing who to trust, and sometimes who to doubt. The Drongo's deception is not malice. It is mastery. And the meerkat's adaptation is not defeat. It is the ultimate evolutionary triumph of the collective mind against the individual trickster. Take a moment to let this truth settle. The most critical alarm call in the animal kingdom is also the most frequently false. It is a powerful paradox that forces us to reevaluate our notions of cooperation and self-preservation. The story of the meerkat and the Drongo offers no simple fable of friendship, but a complex, enduring lesson in the nature of intelligence, a dazzling, almost mathematical equation where trust is continuously weighed against the hunger of one and the safety of the many. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, please consider liking and subscribing. It truly helps us bring more stories like this to light. We have a question for you. What was the single moment in this story that resonated with you the most? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one.